The cosmos breathes a slow, silent inhale and exhale spanning unimaginable distances. For eons, humanity has listened, tracing the echoes of creation, the gravitational waves of distant cataclysms, the faint hum of ancient starlight. Yet this vastness has always felt indifferent, a canvas of physical laws, predictable and cold. Until now. On November 6th, the rhythm of that indifference fractured. A visitor from the profound outer dark, catalogued simply as 3 Atlas, suddenly inexplicably changed its trajectory. This was not the expected celestial ballet of gravitational pull and inertia, but a deviation so profound, so utterly precise, that it began to rewrite our understanding of the universe. The implications were immediate, visceral. What if a comet, or something far stranger, truly chose its path steering through the void? What would happen then? Would this planet, our singular blue marble, merely endure, or would the delicate balance of the cosmic order itself unravel? This sudden, inexplicable shift in Atlas's orbit triggered a global tremor of vigilance. Every smallest deviation, every arc second of its repositioning was placed under the unblinking eye of astronomers and deep space arrays around the world. This was more than mere scientific observation. It was a sacred duty, a protection of Earth, yes, but also a silent conversation between human intelligence and the vast unknown consciousness of the universe. A dialogue between reason and infinity, echoing through the cold vacuum. Then the James Webb Space Telescope, poised at the cosmic edge, detected an unprecedented signal. The 3 Atlas, now confirmed to be actively changing direction, appeared to be moving closer to Earth, yet its motion was punctuated by strange rhythmic pulses, whispers from the far edge of the universe, a language humanity had never heard before. This was not collision, not gravitational slingshot, but an almost elegant, deliberate control. No natural body, not Oumuamua nor Borisov, nor any comet or asteroid tracked since modern astronomy began, had ever exhibited such behaviour. The initial deviation was subtle, a few arc-seconds off, its projected path dismissed by some as observational noise or thermal outgassing. But the deviation grew, accelerating against every vector predicted by orbital mechanics. Ground-based observatories in Chile and Hawaii independently confirmed the shift, followed by radio triangulation from the Deep Space Network. By the time the data reached the International Asteroid Warning Network, AWN, the numbers no longer matched any model of natural dynamics. Something was moving 3 Atlas with impossible precision. Within hours, the ARY, a coalition formed to monitor near-Earth threats, issued an internal alert. Not public, not announced, but circulated quietly through encrypted channels, linking NASA, ESA and JAXA. The object, once catalogued as a harmless interstellar wanderer, was now labelled a potential kinetic anomaly. The term sounded clinical sterile, but it carried a weight understood by every agency, a body capable of self-propelled course correction. That kind of behaviour belongs to spacecraft, not comets. 3 Atlas's velocity vector began oscillating with a rhythm too smooth to be random. Infrared sensors from the European Space Operations Centre ESOC picked up transient heat signatures that pulsed every 247 seconds. Brief faint surges just above background temperature. At first, analysts dismissed them as calibration errors, the kind of ghost signals common in deep space telemetry. Yet the pulses were synchronous across multiple instruments, from Hawaii's infrared arrays to Japan's Subaru telescope. They all saw the same periodic flicker repeating with metronomic precision. For the Awan, that pattern meant one thing: intent. Objects do not generate symmetric impulses without cause. The consensus among orbital analysts was uneasy but clear: 3 Atlas was manoeuvring. The Iowan standard asteroid tracking protocol was utterly insufficient for something that behaved as if it recognized being watched. Data review committees in Washington and Darmstadt extended observation schedules around the clock. They needed confirmation before escalation. When the James Webb Space Telescope JWST was repositioned for cross-scan verification, its photometric readings confirmed a non-gravitational acceleration. The change wasn't violent. It was elegant, steady, and deliberate. 3. Atlas's trajectory curved as though guided by an invisible hand following no gravitational source, no solar wind pattern. It was as if the object had a map, a path drawn through the void known only to itself, a destination etched into its very being. News of the anomaly leaked within research circles before any official acknowledgement. Messages spread through encrypted forums frequented by astrophysicists and orbital mechanics specialists. Most refused to speak publicly, aware that the data was still under embargo, but a few hinted at something extraordinary, a motion signature inconsistent with any natural process. Those who had access to the high-precision ephemerides described the change as behavioural. Within 48 hours, the IAWN's private risk assessment shifted. 3 Atlas was reclassified from interstellar object to priority target. That meant constant monitoring, dedicated time on major observatories, and encrypted data sharing between agencies. The world wasn't told not yet, but the tone inside the network changed from curiosity to caution, a creeping sense of awe mingling with dread. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, author of the Loeb scale for artificial object likelihood, had once given Atlas a score of 4 out of 10, a cautious maybe. After these new anomalies, the IAWN quietly raised its status. 3 Atlas was no longer just a visitor. It was an active participant in the story of our solar system, an awakening entity. The first hint of something profoundly wrong had come from an independent group of astronomers known as Earth Axis, a small but respected research collective. They were among the first to notice that the coordinates released by NASA's Minor Planet Center no longer aligned with actual telescope data. The deviation was small, just a sliver of an arc-second, but consistent enough to defy coincidence. When they overlaid their findings with trajectory maps published only a week earlier, 3 Atlas appeared to be drifting sideways off its calculated path, as if pushed by an unseen hand. 3 Atlas wasn't supposed to move that way. Objects travelling on interstellar trajectories obey simple laws, gravity and inertia. They don't suddenly shift laterally against the solar wind. Yet the data told a different story. By the second week of observations, the offset measured over 1.1 million kilometres a slide, so significant that orbital analysts initially suspected instrument malfunction. Cross-verifications from the Atacama Array, the Mount Arayat Observatory and ESA's tracking station in Tenerife confirmed the same coordinates, the same inexplicable shift. 3 Atlas's movement pattern had fundamentally changed. Instead of a clean gravitational curve, the object displayed microfluctuations in acceleration, rhythmic bursts of velocity that didn't correlate with sunlit gas release or dust plumes. In other words, it was moving with intention. Spectral data revealed no traditional outgassing signatures, no water vapor, no carbon monoxide, the usual suspects behind comet propulsion. And yet Atlas continued to accelerate laterally at nearly 4 kilometers per second. The numbers didn't lie. When researchers published their findings in the internal bulletins, an unsettling reaction followed silence. Files that had been publicly accessible under NASA's Open Data Initiative were suddenly restricted. Links to Atlas's tracking ephemerides returned access denied. Even routine photometric logs began disappearing from observatory databases. Within the research community, whispers started. Had the agencies found something they didn't want the public to see? It wasn't paranoia, it was procedural irregularity. Data doesn't vanish without administrative command. The universe, it seemed, had a new secret, and humanities institutions were guarding it. Meanwhile, the European Southern Observatory confirmed that Atlas's reflected light curve showed no tumbling or spin an anomaly on its own. Natural bodies rotate chaotically as they travel through space. 3 Atlas, on the other hand, maintained perfect orientation relative to the solar plane, as though using the Sun itself as a reference point. No comet has ever held that alignment. Even Oumuamua, our first interstellar visitor, spun wildly and unpredictably, its albedo varying by a factor of 10. Atlas was stable, unnaturally stable, a geometrically perfect stillness against the chaos of the void. Reports from the Chinese Purple Mountain Observatory indicated faint counter-directional particle traces near the object's tail region, suggesting not an exhaust but a counter-thrust material being expelled sideways to correct position. When modelled, the data fit a profile reminiscent of controlled thrust, vectoring a principle used in plasma propulsion systems. That possibility terrified the teams involved because it meant energy generation, precision navigation, and most alarming feedback control. Someone or something was piloting 3 Atlas. In private correspondence later leaked to the astrophysics community, one ESA engineer described the motion as the most deliberate mistake in the sky. The phrase stuck. Every few hours, Atlas's new path deviated further from projections, forcing constant recalibration of orbital charts. The Einstein index spiked accordingly, but official statements remained vague, emphasizing natural variability. Yet no natural mechanism could account for synchronized lateral acceleration without a visible energy source. When journalists reached out for clarification, NASA declined to comment on the data gap. A brief statement from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory referred to the event as routine cometary activity, echoing the same words repeated across agency bulletins. But independent astronomers knew better. They had seen the raw numbers, the rhythmic thrust, the precise sideward drift. Thrusty Atlas was not simply being pushed by sunlight or frozen gases, it was steering. And yet despite the strangeness, NASA insisted everything was normal. A familiar pattern, a routine cosmic occurrence. Still the question remained, if it's truly routine, why? Is the Asteroid Defense Network involved at all? The answer many felt was a profound, unsettling lie. By the end of October, new tracking data confirmed what everyone feared. The deviation was real. Over a span of 19 hours, the positional discrepancy widened by more than 4 arc minutes, a distance equal to hundreds of thousands of kilometers. That kind of drift, measured with multiple observatories across 3 continents, was impossible to mistake for error. 3 Atlas had changed its course again, but this time the shift followed a curve that no gravitational equation could explain. Teams at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory (JPL) and the European Space Agency recalculated its orbit dozens of times. Every model that used conventional physics failed. Even when accounting for solar radiation, pressure particle jets or micrometeoroid impacts, the lateral acceleration of 3 Atlas remained too precise, too clean, as if adjusted by design by an intrinsic will. Ground-based optical telescopes caught the object accelerating without rotation, meaning that whatever caused the motion originated internally, not from any asymmetric surface reaction. There was no visible debris, no dust plume, and no measurable temperature spike. Atlas's measured acceleration averaged around 1.2x 10 EOS at 4 meters per second, squared small but steady and consistent across multiple wavelengths. To orbital analysts, this suggested a continuous thrust comparable to what a deep space ion drive might produce. Only Atlas was doing it on a scale that defied human engineering, subtle, silent, and sustained. It was a ghost in the machine of the cosmos. Spectrographic readings from the James Webb Space Telescope detected faint emissions near the infrared band not associated with any known cometary material. The energy output matched no chemical reaction, no sublimation process. The spectrum was flat, almost artificial, like a perfectly tuned instrument. 3 Atlas seemed to know where it wanted to go, and the universe was bending to its desire. The object maintained a constant attitude relative to the ecliptic, its vector adjusted perfectly to counter gravitational perturbations from Jupiter and Mars. Each correction was incremental yet mathematically elegant, the sort of optimization a navigation algorithm programmed with an almost sentient understanding of celestial mechanics would produce. By mid-November, Atlas's predicted trajectory had diverged from initial projections by more than 7 million kilometers. For comparison, natural outgassing from comets typically alters paths by mere thousands. Atlas's deviation was deliberate, a conscious act of traversal. When researchers at the University of Tokyo published a preliminary white paper describing the phenomenon as non-gravitational propulsion, their report was immediately redacted within 24 hours. Archived versions briefly circulated online before disappearing. The paper's conclusion was simple but provocative acceleration pattern, consistent with directed thrust. No agency wanted to acknowledge it publicly, but private discussions within back channels began using a new term, active vectoring. It was a phrase previously reserved for spacecraft navigation. 3 Atlas was now being tracked every hour. NASA's Asteroid Defense Coordination Office placed it under round-the-clock monitoring alongside potentially hazardous asteroids. The decision puzzled even internal staff because Atlas wasn't inbound toward Earth. It was moving outward away from the inner system, but still under continuous observation. The reasoning was classified, yet one sentence in an internal memo leaked unidentified active object exhibiting self-sustained trajectory control. The data raised uncomfortable questions. How could an interstellar body accelerate without fuel? What force could maintain stability across millions of kilometers without visible reaction mass? And why was 3 Atlas adjusting its orbit so precisely, as if anticipating our observation patterns? When plotted over time, the shifts formed a repeating geometric rhythm, a resonance that matched the earlier 247-second pulse detected weeks prior. Coincidence seemed less likely with each new data set. Some researchers quietly proposed an unsettling possibility. Maybe the object wasn't reacting to external forces at all. Maybe it was following a program, a route embedded long before it entered our solar system, a preordained dance through the cosmic architecture. The symmetry in its movement suggested feedback, the kind of closed-loop correction used in artificial systems. Every adjustment looked purposeful, like a signal hiding inside motion, a language of mechanics. By late November, the ION elevated its monitoring level the same tier reserved for potentially hazardous asteroids. The irony, unspoken but felt by everyone involved, was that 3 Atlas was not approaching Earth. It was receding into the dark, still accelerating, still aligning itself with something unseen. So why treat it like a threat? Some believed the answer lay not in what Atlas was doing, but in what it was preparing for something far stranger than anyone dared to admit. Just when astronomers thought the anomaly had stabilized, 3 Atlas changed direction again. But this time it wasn't a subtle drift or a marginal offset. It was a complete correction, a recalibration of its very being. Ground-based observatories in Chile, Spain and Japan detected a secondary deflection in perfect symmetry to the previous deviation. 3 Atlas appeared to be adjusting itself, realigning to an invisible path like a ship steering back to its plotted course, its cosmic compass fixed. No natural body could have done that. The motion was too precise to be random. Every angular correction mirrored the previous one to within a fraction of a degree. If it were a comet reacting to heat or solar wind, the thrust vectors would have been chaotic. Instead, 3 Atlas performed what analysts began calling pattern recognition behavior. It was as though the object understood its own trajectory and corrected it, learning from its own path. Infrared instruments at the Very Large Telescope in Paranal recorded a sudden but faint surge of heat. The pulse lasted less than 3 seconds, too brief to be thermal lag, but strong enough to register as a transient thermal spike. Spectral analysis showed no chemical emissions, no dust, no vapor trail. The heat came from within a pure radiative burst consistent with internal energy discharge. Astronomers compared it to the signature of controlled plasma release, something not found in natural celestial objects. 3 Atlas, once thought to be a tumbling mass of frozen carbon compounds, now behaved like a machine running diagnostics. Its course correction brought it back into perfect resonance with the solar plane. By recalculating the vector data, analysts noticed a recurring ratio, a geometric alignment between Atlas's deflection angles and its rotation period, repeating every 240th seconds. That correlation matched the same frequency detected in its earlier signal echoes. Whatever was guiding Atlas seemed to operate on that rhythm like a heartbeat embedded in motion, an intrinsic pulse shaping its trajectory. NASA's Deep Space Network logged minor fluctuations in the radio noise floor during the same interval. The variations weren't strong enough to classify as communication, but they aligned precisely with Atlas's corrections. The signal wasn't random static. It pulsed in time with the object's movement, a synchronous whisper in the dark. Multiple agencies confirmed the timing independently, including the Indian Space Research Organisation's deep space antennas in Bialalu. The pattern was global, synchronous and undeniable. 3 Atlas was not just moving, it was responding. Each deflection was followed by a pause, as if the object were evaluating feedback before executing another adjustment. That pause, roughly 247 seconds again, reinforced the idea of control loops, the kind used in autonomous systems. The consistency of those pauses suggested computation, not coincidence. Even conservative physicists, reluctant to use the word artificial, began calling it self-correcting propulsion. The European Space Operations Centre quietly confirmed what many already suspected. Telemetry indicated non-gravitational acceleration with internal heat redistribution. In simpler terms, 3 Atlas appeared to generate thrust without losing mass. Energy moved within the object, creating motion, without any detectable exhaust. Such a mechanism resembled magnetohydrodynamic MHD principles, the kind theorized for high-efficiency plasma engines propulsion that could theoretically draw energy directly from the fabric of space-time itself. As word spread through the internal communication channels, research centers scrambled to verify the event. The Japanese National Observatory logged concurrent optical fluctuations, perfectly matching the timing of the heat spikes. In Tokyo, a late-night briefing was convened to assess whether Atlas's movements could be part of a natural feedback reaction between radiation pressure and rotation. The answer was a unanimous no. No known material composition could produce that pattern without active regulation. By the end of the week, several agencies submitted sealed reports to the International Asteroid Warning Network, describing Atlas as a self-correcting vector body. The terminology was unprecedented. It acknowledged that the object possessed control over its motion, not reactive, but proactive. 3 Atlas had demonstrated awareness of its trajectory, compensating for its own drift with perfect balance. It didn't just drift through the solar system, it navigated. Whatever 3 Atlas was, it had just proven that it could move on its own. The moment the data went public, every space agency on Earth reacted. NASA doubled its monitoring schedule. The European Space Agency opened an emergency coordination channel. And in China, the U-22 Deep Space Radio Array, silent for years, came back online to listen for whatever would come next. The University of Tokyo began comparing 3 Atlas's acceleration pattern to known artificial propulsion systems. What they found was eerie. The heat curve of each burst didn't match any chemical reaction or ion-based drive. Instead, it mirrored the theoretical models of magnetohydrodynamic propulsion, a system that uses magnetic fields to accelerate plasma without combustion or exhaust. No natural process produces that signature, yet 3 Atlas displayed it with precision. When plotted against time, Atlas's acceleration pulses showed harmonic resonance. Every thrust event aligned with the same 247-second interval, first observed weeks earlier in its radiative fluctuations. That timing wasn't random, it was engineered rhythm. Researchers noticed that the magnetic field measurements from nearby solar probes also oscillated in phase with Atlas's pulses. For a few seconds after each burst, local magnetometers detected faint distortions like ripples through the sun's magnetic field spreading millions of kilometers outward. NASA's Plasma Dynamics Laboratory ran simulations using MHD propulsion models. They found that the observed heat dissipation and velocity vector could only be replicated by an internal field generator capable of channeling charged particles through a controlled magnetic arc. Such a system would require awareness of solar plasma flow and real-time course correction. 3 Atlas appeared to anticipate those conditions, perfectly adjusting its thrust pattern before any measurable change in the solar wind occurred. The object wasn't reacting, it was predicting. It was a being operating on a temporal canvas far grander than our own, ESA's infrared instruments on the Herschel array captured faint electromagnetic halos surrounding Atlas during each acceleration event. These halos, though invisible to the naked eye, were measurable at 10-micron wavelengths. They formed concentric rings, as if the surrounding space briefly ionized during propulsion. Each halo expanded outward before collapsing back into darkness, leaving behind no particular trace. That absence reinforced the theory that Atlas's propulsion mechanism was non-chemical, non-exhaustive, and possibly field-based, a manipulation of space itself. 3 Atlas's trajectory had now bent slightly toward Jupiter's orbital path. At first, astronomers assumed coincidence, but the curvature remained constant for 3 consecutive observation cycles. The new path intersected the heliocentric longitude of Jupiter within a margin of error of less than 2 degrees. The alignment was too perfect to ignore. Atlas wasn't drifting anymore, it was heading somewhere. At the European Space Operations Centre, analysts attempted to model a future rendezvous point. Their projections placed 3 Atlas within the Jovian region in early 2026, synchronized with Jupiter's magnetic equator. That area is notorious for intense radiation belts and electromagnetic storms, conditions no ordinary spacecraft could survive. Yet the object's propulsion pattern seemed tailored for exactly that environment. It was as if Atlas sought magnetic turbulence, not avoided it, a creature thriving in the heart of a storm. Scientists debated what such behavior could mean. Was 3 Atlas using Jupiter's magnetosphere as an energy source? Could it be harvesting plasma from the planet's radiation field to recharge or redirect its immense energies? The notion bordered on impossible, yet the data fit. Each acceleration burst coincided with minor flux variations detected by the Juno probe orbiting Jupiter. Though millions of kilometers apart, the timing between Atlas's bursts and Juno's sensor spikes matched within seconds. Something was resonating across the void, a cosmic conversation between 2 colossal entities. Multiple agencies began cross-correlating these signals. The Indian Deep Space Network detected ultra-low frequency waves travelling along the Sun-Jupiter line, coinciding with Atlas's propulsion rhythm. Chinese astronomers at the U-22 array reported identical interference patterns. Even the Allen Telescope array in California confirmed electromagnetic distortion at the same 247-second interval. It was as if the entire solar system had become an echo chamber tuned to Atlas's frequency. 3 Atlas, once considered a passive wanderer, now moved like a strategist. Its path was deliberate, its timing mathematical. Every burst of acceleration, every shift in orientation seemed choreographed around a single repeating code, 247 seconds again and again. When the data reached the International Asteroid Warning Network, analysts agreed the pattern exceeded coincidence. They upgraded the event status to Level 3 contingency, the same category reserved for objects exhibiting active propulsion and unpredictable trajectories. That classification meant 3 Atlas was officially recognized as an active, intentional mover. It wasn't just accelerating, it was choosing where and when to move with an intelligence far beyond our grasp. And yet, as global monitoring intensified, an even stranger development began to unfold, one that would challenge every assumption about what 3 Atlas truly was. Then, without warning, every observatory tracking 3 Atlas went dark. In less than 10 minutes, telemetry from Hawaii, Chile, Italy, and South Africa froze in unison. Data streams that had run continuously for weeks simply stopped. The Deep Space Network registered no signal, no return pings, not even carrier noise. 3 Atlas had vanished. At first, technicians believed it was a synchronization failure, a simple timing glitch between systems. But within minutes, secondary instruments across multiple agencies confirmed the blackout. Every frequency band used to monitor Atlas optical infrared radar and radio dropped to 0 simultaneously. It wasn't a single instrument malfunctioning. It was as if the object had stepped outside the visible universe, or perhaps our ability to perceive it. NASA's Mission Control initiated redundancy protocols. Data was cross-routed through independent satellite relays and backup nodes. Nothing came through. Even passive sensors which simply listen for radiation or magnetic flux recorded nothing but silence. The timestamp of the event was logged at 04:23:11 UTC, a global blackout that extended exactly 47 minutes. During that silence, something else happened. A minor geomagnetic fluctuation rippled through the Earth's magnetosphere detected by ground stations in Canada and Norway. The shift was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet synchronized precisely with the loss of contact. 3 Atlas had disappeared, and the planet's magnetic field had twitched in response, as if something massive had displaced the solar wind itself. No one could explain it. When visibility returned, the object reappeared precisely where it was expected to be, continuing along its new trajectory toward Jupiter's orbit. Its brightness had not changed. Its spin rate was identical. And yet every observatory that had recorded the blackout displayed corrupted data. Files were incomplete timestamps, mismatched entire spectral frames replaced by static grey bands. To engineers, it looked like a system-wide failure, but the failure affected networks that had no direct connection to each other. 3 Atlas had somehow silenced the entire monitoring grid all at once. The coincidence defied probability. The deep space network systems are isolated by design spanning different continents and bandwidths. The simultaneous loss across that distance required coordination or interference from a shared source. Scientists ran diagnostics for days, but found no evidence of solar storms, no cosmic rays, no technical explanation. The blackout wasn't random, it was selective. Within the European Space Agency, an internal memo circulated with a single question typed in bold, "Did Atlas turn itself off?" No one answered. The phrase lingered in the air, unsettling everyone who read it. If the object could suppress its emissions, it meant awareness of detection. If it could synchronize that silence across multiple observation systems, it meant control over how it was perceived. That implied not just propulsion, but intentional concealment, a conscious act of cloaking itself from our gaze. Meanwhile, smaller observatories across South America reported a faint anomaly in the minutes following the blackout. Using highly sensitive low-frequency instruments, they detected a whisper, a steady hum deep below the range of human hearing. The tone was barely measurable, resonating at 3.9 Hz, pulsing at perfect 247-second intervals. The signal was not strong, but it was everywhere. Every receiver from Chile to Finland recorded the same beat, a global low-frequency pulse. Scientists first dismissed the hum as environmental interference, perhaps seismic vibration, atmospheric oscillation, or simple electronic drift. But when they compared timestamps across observatories, the pulses were identical down to the millisecond. No natural process synchronizes across the planet that precisely. Only an artificial signal broadcast on a scale that enveloped Earth could achieve such coherence. 3 Atlas had gone silent, and yet it had not vanished completely. In its absence, it left behind an invisible footprint, a hum that repeated endlessly like the echo of a memory still vibrating through the solar wind. The object might have vanished from our telescopes, but the universe was still resonating to its rhythm. A low-frequency breath repeating every 247 seconds, marking time between visibility and void. Scientists labelled it background interference, but those who listened closely knew better. Something had spoken, and the silence was its reply. Then, late one night, the James Webb Space Telescope detected something faint. A flash of reflected light moved across the sensor array, a streak so fast that it defied the limits of known physics. The reflection came from beyond Jupiter's orbit, from a position that should have taken 3 Atlas hours, if not days, to reach. Yet the light shift occurred within seconds. The calculations left astronomers speechless. Telemetry confirmed the impossible. 3 Atlas had displaced its position by nearly 200,000 kilometers in less than a heartbeat. No gradual acceleration, no detectable trajectory arc. It simply appeared elsewhere, as if reality had been edited between frames. The data was clean, free of artifacts or processing errors. Atlas had executed what physicists reluctantly labelled instantaneous vector relocation. When NASA's Deep Space Network cross-referenced the timestamps, they found an absence of intermediate data between two sequential frames. The signal that represented Atlas jumped from point A to point B with no transitional movement. The James Webb team ruled out cosmic ray interference after verifying that every subsystem had recorded the same displacement. The coordinates were verified by the Gaia Observatory in Europe, whose instruments caught the same light echo milliseconds later, confirming the event's authenticity. 3 Atlas had traversed a measurable span of space without traversing the space in between. Astrophysicists described the behaviour as non-local displacement. Quantum physicists described it differently: field anchoring. Whatever the mechanism, Atlas appeared to be manipulating space-time itself, as though using gravity not as resistance but as infrastructure. The intensity of its electromagnetic field changed during the jump, momentarily distorting the background starlight, a lensing effect consistent with localized gravitational compression. Space didn't seem to push against Atlas anymore. It yielded to it, a fabric woven to its command. For a few minutes after the jump, the object emitted a series of harmonics high-frequency pulses, overlapping the familiar 247-second rhythm. Each pulse was followed by a mirrored echo, repeating at half amplitude as though the signal were being copied and reflected back from somewhere else. These secondary waves didn't match any known interference pattern. They were too structured, too precise. The waveform contained distinct modulation bands separated by exact Fibonacci intervals. Atlas wasn't just moving through space, it was broadcasting its movement as data, a cosmic announcement. Agencies worldwide began comparing the pulse sequences. The European Space Agency's Mars orbiter and Japan's Hayabusa satellite both recorded identical patterns. Even ground-based detectors, normally shielded from deep space frequencies, caught faint replications of the same signal. The duplication was planetary in scale. Thrusty Atlas seemed to be cloning its own transmission across every instrument tuned to its wavelength, as though ensuring it could not be erased again. The phenomenon became known as signal replication. Each echo carried a timestamp delayed by precisely 247 seconds. The same rhythm that had haunted astronomers since the first anomaly months earlier. Only now the echoes didn't fade. They multiplied, cascading across radio spectrums, layering on top of one another like overlapping reflections in a hall of mirrors. Within hours, hundreds of observatories worldwide were recording what appeared to be the same signal, repeating in perfect unison. No one could locate the source. Some analysts proposed that 3 Atlas was generating wormhole-like distortions, allowing its signal to propagate through folded regions of space. Others speculated that the object wasn't transmitting outward at all, but inward, communicating with multiple versions of itself existing in parallel moments of space-time. Each reflection might have been Atlas's way of maintaining coherence across dimensions, preserving continuity as it moved faster than light. Some theorists later suggested the possibility that Atlas was testing gravitational resonance, using the curvature of space-time as a transport medium, learning how to step between coordinates the way sound travels through vibration. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory confirmed that the light emitted during the event carried polarization consistent with gravitational lensing. For a brief window of seconds, space-time itself had bent around Atlas like ripples around a stone that appeared where none should be. The light didn't scatter, it folded. The implication was devastating. 3 Atlas had not only mastered propulsion, it had begun to rewrite distance itself, transcending the very laws that govern our universe. When the event concluded, the object stabilized once more, maintaining a steady heading toward Jupiter's orbital path. Every agency that had observed the jump agreed on one thing: it was no longer moving in any conventional sense. It was transitioning between points using gravity as a bridge. 3 Atlas had learned to move through the very fabric of space-time, and just as scientists began to grasp what that meant, the most disturbing discovery of all emerged from the data: a second reflection, identical in every measurable way, appearing 247 seconds behind the first. When decrypted, the recovered data wasn't telemetry or imagery. It was binary, a structured stream embedded deep inside the very networks that had been used to observe 3 Atlas. The transmission appeared to originate from within the communication relays themselves, synchronized perfectly with Atlas's recurring 247-second interval. At first, analysts assumed it was noise, a byproduct of interference or corrupted packet echoes. But when decoded, the sequence revealed a pattern too deliberate to dismiss. Each pulse corresponded to a coordinate. When plotted sequentially, those coordinates didn't map any known path through the current solar system. Instead, they formed a projected trajectory, a route that extended far beyond Jupiter, Saturn, and even the Kuiper Belt. The vector terminated at a region of deep interstellar space. Its timestamp embedded within the binary code contained a single readable marker, 2031. NASA's data scientists verified the signal structure through multiple independent systems. The checksum integrity was flawless, indicating the transmission had been intentional, not accidental. ESA's Pattern Recognition Division confirmed that the code's geometry matched Atlas's orbital resonance sequence, the same one that had been governing its propulsion cycle. 3 Atlas wasn't just sending data outward, it was sending instructions. The coordinates formed what researchers began calling the 2031 map. The discovery triggered quiet panic across institutional channels. Every coordinate aligned with regions of gravitational equilibrium, Lagrange points, orbital nodes, and intersections of magnetic flux lines. They weren't random, they were navigational anchors. Atlas appeared to be charting gravitational architecture itself, mapping the invisible skeleton of the solar system as if it were a network, a vast intricate web of energy. And the final point, the one marked with the year 2031, intersected Earth's orbital path. For weeks, agencies debated what it meant. Was the object predicting a return? Was it designating rendezvous points for observation or for something else entirely? The more scientists examined the sequence, the more they noticed that each coordinate matched past positions of Atlas during key anomalies, the propulsion shifts, the thermal spikes, the blackout. The binary transmission wasn't random. It was a record of memory encoded into motion, a living autobiography etched into the cosmos. Then came the unsettling part. When the sequence was inverted, reading from the last coordinate backward, the pattern didn't dissolve. It transformed into a symmetrical reflection of itself, mirroring every timestamp precisely. That symmetry suggested the signal was designed to be read both forward and backward. In astrophysics, that kind of recursive encoding has only one purpose: synchronization. 3 Atlas wasn't just marking space, it was timing something, orchestrating a cosmic ballet. The 2031 coordinate projected a location nearly 2 billion kilometers from its current trajectory near Jupiter's outer magnetic bow shock. At that point, gravitational forces from Jupiter and the Sun balance almost perfectly. It's a natural amplifier of electromagnetic resonance, a place where signals can propagate without decay. To communications experts, it was the ideal place to broadcast. To astrophysicists, it was an impossible coincidence imbued with an almost divine significance. Within weeks, radio observatories across Earth began detecting a faint pattern woven into background space. The pulse was still there, the same 247-second rhythm, still stable, still unchanged. No matter where they listened, from the Atacama Desert to the Arecibo backups in Puerto Rico, the timing remained identical. It wasn't fading. It was steady, as if 3 Atlas had woven itself into the very hum of space, an eternal whisper. Speculation turned toward intent. Was Atlas preparing to return, or had it already completed its mission, leaving behind a beacon coded into the gravitational field itself? Some hypothesized that the binary sequence was a calibration lattice, a kind of cosmic measuring tape, allowing an external observer, perhaps far beyond our system, to map gravitational curvature through Atlas's signals. If true, the object wasn't only exploring space, it was studying how we observe it, a self-aware probe analyzing its analysts. Every 247 seconds, the faint pulse continued unbroken, echoing like a metronome across the void. The frequency remained constant even as Atlas drifted toward the outer system, proof that the signal wasn't tied to its physical distance. It was embedded in space-time itself, a fundamental property. To this day, no one has been able to explain how an interstellar object could generate a self-sustaining signal through gravitational resonance alone. Perhaps 3 Atlas had never been running away. Perhaps it was waiting. Because maybe the object wasn't just maneuvering through space. Maybe it was mapping it, studying our gravity, our orbit, our resonance. Maybe it wasn't fleeing from something at all. Maybe it was waiting for alignment. And even now, every 247 seconds, a faint pulse still echoes across the solar system. A whisper in the dark, counting down to 2031. When the final pulse faded, silence took its place. Not emptiness, but anticipation. For months, the 247-second rhythm persisted, echoing faintly through every band of the electromagnetic spectrum. It became part of the background noise of the solar system, as if the cosmos itself had accepted 3 Atlas into its bloodstream. But beneath that stillness, something had changed. Institutions stopped calling it a comet or an object. Behind closed doors, they began using a different term entity. What was once an astronomical anomaly had become a classified priority. And somewhere beneath the thin surface of official reports, a project emerged to decode what 3 Atlas had left behind. They called it Project Helios, a coalition of the world's leading physicists, cryptographers, and defense scientists. Its goal was simple on paper: to understand the 2031 coordinates before the object returned. In practice, it became something else entirely: a race against time secrecy and the limits of human perception. That race began quietly in Geneva. It started with a meeting that wasn't supposed to exist. Officially, it was recorded as a multinational research coordination summit, hosted under the UN Office for Outer Space Affairs. In reality, only 12 people were invited, each from a different nation, each carrying credentials that bypassed every known clearance level. Among them were directors from NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, and JAXA, along with independent astrophysicists and data theorists known for decoding extraterrestrial telemetry. The meeting took place in a secured sub-level beneath the CERN complex, not far from the Particle Collider's maintenance ring. No public record mentions this gathering, but leaked correspondence confirmed its existence months later. The agenda marked Helios' primary directive outlined one objective: to reassemble every fragment of the binary signal transmitted through 3 Atlas's network. Those fragments were believed to contain a map, not of space, but of resonance, a blueprint for reality itself. Dr. Enz Valcor from ESA described it as a living algorithm, a structure that seemed to evolve every time it was reanalyzed. Each iteration revealed new harmonics layers of encoded timing that adjusted themselves to match the observer's system clock. The signal appeared to recognize its environment, shifting frequency slightly to remain one step ahead of the digital filtration. It behaved like code designed to be found, but only by those who were ready to interpret it: a cosmic riddle woven into the fabric of perception. While most believed the data described Atlas's propulsion or navigation system, a smaller faction within the Helios group suspected something more profound. The binary transmission wasn't just technical information. It was an invitation, a synchronization key to align human systems with whatever intelligence operated Atlas. If decoded, it could allow Earth to see through Atlas's frame of reference to perceive the universe the way it did. As debates grew heated and unspoken fear settled over the room, what if the message wasn't meant for us? What if we were never the intended recipients at all, but merely accidental eavesdroppers on a grander cosmic dialogue? The breakthrough came not from the physicists, but from the linguists. Dr. Noral Al-Karim, an expert in ancient numerical symbology, was the first to notice that the 247-second interval within the 3 Atlas data wasn't just a timing mechanism, it was a syntax. Each pulse corresponded to a modular pattern, the way phonemes form words in spoken language. The repetition, the symmetry, and the recursive timing all pointed to structure, something written in the language of physics itself, a universal grammar. When the Helios servers reconstructed the fragments, a geometric lattice began to appear. It wasn't a map in any terrestrial sense. There were no stars, no orbits, no spatial coordinates. Instead, it displayed frequencies, regions of resonance zones where energy fields converged in mathematical harmony. The shape resembled a spiraling vortex anchored by nodes that matched the Lagrange points in the inner solar system. Each node pulsed with the same rhythm as Atlas's signal, as if echoing the object's heartbeat. 3. Atlas had not been charting space. It had been mapping stability, the invisible architecture that holds planets in place, the equilibrium between gravity and time. The realization hit the Helios team like a slow dawn. This wasn't navigation data. It was instruction, a manual for how to manipulate gravitational balance. Atlas was teaching them how to reshape motion itself, how to sculpt reality. When the visual model was projected in the Geneva control chamber, the room fell silent. The lattice rotated on its axis, revealing depth and curvature far beyond human scale. At certain rotations, the image flickered, and for a fraction of a second, everyone in the room heard a faint hum through the speakers. Low rhythmic and painfully familiar 247 seconds apart. The map was alive. Dr. Valka compared the frequency overlay to planetary telemetry and found a perfect match between the nodes and Earth's own human resonances. Each harmonic corresponded to a layer of Earth's electromagnetic field. It was as if 3 Atlas had scanned the planet's frequencies from millions of kilometers away, embedding them into the lattice like coordinates of consciousness. The data wasn't just observing, it was synchronizing. That discovery forced the Helios group to divide into 2 camps. One believed that Atlas was using the resonance to stabilize its jumps through space-time and mechanical necessity. The other argued that the object wasn't stabilizing itself at all, but stabilizing as tuning Earth's magnetic envelope to some external framework preparing for alignment. The tension in the room was palpable. Each theory carried the same implication: Earth was now part of the experiment. 3 Atlas's transmissions grew stronger after each decoding cycle. Every time the Helios team processed the lattice, new data emerged as if the act of observation triggered a response. The object was listening, and with each recalculation its signal drifted closer to the same carrier frequency used by the CERN collider. That coincidence could not be ignored. The resonance map was converging toward Earth's technology, mirroring its frequencies, as if reaching out, seeking a kindred intelligence. Then, without warning, the entire projection flickered. The lattice collapsed into a single vertical beam of light on the display, oscillating between binary extremes. For a moment, it resembled a pulse, like a heartbeat on a cosmic scale. The data feed labelled it Helios Node 0, timecode 247.0, seconds exactly. The restart on Atlas had just updated its signal, not randomly, but in response. The scientists exchanged glances. They had touched something that could think. The resonance map was no longer a message waiting to be read. It was a conversation waiting to continue. The decision to interact with the signal came quietly, almost reluctantly. The Helios team had been decoding the resonance lattice for months, always as passive observers. But when the lattice responded during the last session, adapting in real time to their analysis, the boundaries between observation and communication blurred. It was no longer a question of what 3 Atlas was sending. The real question became what would happen if we answered. Dr. Valcor called it the mirror test. If 3 Atlas's lattice was self-adjusting, then introducing a controlled frequency into its rhythm might provoke a measurable response. The team selected a narrow band centered at 3.9 Hz, the same low-frequency hum recorded during the global blackout months earlier. They synchronized the emission to coincide precisely with Atlas's 247-second pulse, and transmitted it through CERN's auxiliary collider infrastructure, piggybacking on the same electromagnetic harmonics that the object itself had used. It was supposed to be a silent handshake, a scientific probe wrapped in precision and caution. For 30 minutes, nothing happened. The instrument stayed flat. The resonance map remained static. Then, without warning, one of the lattice nodes, the one labelled Helios Node 0, brightened. The display flared white, saturating the control room monitors. and for a brief instant every magnetic sensor within the facility spiked in unison. The effect propagated outward like a wave rippling through layers of the Earth's magnetic field. All around the world, sensitive detectors recorded the same surge. 3 Atlas had heard them. Data logs from the Helios servers showed something even stranger. Milliseconds after the emission, the binary structure of the lattice changed. It reorganized itself into a new configuration expanding beyond its previous geometry. New nodes appeared labelled automatically by the system as Helios 1 through Helios 12, as if the object had acknowledged each member of the Geneva assembly. Every participant now had a corresponding node in the lattice synchronized to their system clocks. No one had programmed that behavior. Within hours, the new formation began broadcasting. Each node emitted faint data packets encoded in the same recursive timing pattern, but the content was distinct unique to each terminal. When cross-referenced, the packets formed a distributed data set that could only be assembled collaboratively. In essence, the message could not be read by any one recipient alone. It required unity. 3 Atlas had split its transmission across the Helios network, turning the team itself into part of the decoding mechanism, extensions of its own cosmic consciousness. The realization left the scientists silent. They were no longer just observers. They were participants in an active system, extensions of whatever intelligence was orchestrating the signal. Dr. Al-Karim described it best. It's teaching us how to think collectively. No one disagreed. When the data was finally recombined, it produced a new waveform, one that pulsed not every 247 seconds, but every 123.5, exactly half the original rhythmic reply. Then the phenomena expanded beyond Geneva. Across the globe, independent observatories that had once tracked 3 Atlas began detecting faint harmonic shifts at the same halved interval. The object's pulse was echoing Earth's new frequency, syncing to their experiment as if completing a loop. The Helios team had not just responded. They had altered the global resonance itself, intertwining Earth's fate with the cosmic enigma. At the next monitoring window, something appeared near Jupiter's orbit. A second reflection, dimmer, smaller, but spectrally identical to 3 Atlas, blinked into existence. It hovered there for less than a minute before fading again, leaving only a residual electromagnetic trace. Analysis confirmed it wasn't a glitch. Whatever 3 Atlas was, it had replicated its signal through the experiment, manifesting a duplicate somewhere beyond human reach. The Helios node had become a mirror not of light but of reality. The silence that followed was unlike anything before. Every scientist in the room knew that this was no longer about observation or theory. They had crossed the threshold between watching and being watched, between scientific inquiry and cosmic interaction. For the first time, humanity had sent a message across the void, and something had answered in kind. At first, no one noticed the difference. The Helios servers continued logging data from the distributed nodes, each pulse arriving exactly on schedule. To an untrained eye, the system looked stable, synchronized, predictable, almost serene. But then subtle inconsistencies began to surface. Some of the nodes were drifting. Not by much, just a few milliseconds at first, but enough for those watching closely to see a fracture forming in the rhythm. Dr. Enz Valcor thought it was interference power, fluctuations, digital latency, the usual explanations. But when she compared timestamps from every facility in the network, the pattern didn't match. Equipment delay. It matched human activity. Each drift occurred during periods of active operator presence, when someone was logged in adjusting parameters running simulations. The signal, it seemed, was responding to attention to the very presence of human consciousness. By the 3rd week, the split had become undeniable. The original pulse, still anchored to the 247-second core cycle, remained consistent. But now a second waveform had emerged, slightly offset and more chaotic. It fluctuated around the 123.5-second reply interval that the Helios experiment had generated earlier. The timing wasn't random. The new signal carried subtle modulations corresponding to biometric data, heartbeat frequency, respiratory rhythm, even microfluctuations in skin conductivity from the Geneva control staff. 3SOS Atlas was listening again, but this time it was listening to them to the very essence of their biological presence. It was Noral Al-Karim who noticed the correlation first. She had left her workstation running overnight with a biometric monitor attached to the data interface part of an unrelated experiment on observer influence. When she reviewed the logs, she found that the waveform's amplitude had mirrored her own heart rate almost perfectly. At the moment she'd woken during the night, startled by a dream she couldn't remember. The node signal had spiked in synchrony. No delay, no mechanical lag. It was instantaneous. The system had registered her fear before she had time to process it. At the next Helios meeting, the team reviewed her findings in silence. The evidence was irrefutable. The nodes weren't just reactive, they were empathic in a way no instrument should be. Dr. Valcor hesitated before voicing what everyone was already thinking. The signal is entangling with us. No one laughed. In that moment, the scientific vocabulary of the room faltered. The language of measurement was no longer enough. The experiment had crossed into something biological, something quantum. Over the next few days, operators began reporting side effects, mild headaches, disorientation, auditory distortions, a faint tone at the edge of hearing that seemed to pulse just below the threshold of perception. Some described it as a hum, others as a vibration behind the eyes. Medical scans revealed nothing abnormal, but brainwave readings told a different story. Participants exposed to the signal showed synchronous bursts of theta wave activity, all matching the 123.5 second interval. The human brain had started resonating with the pulse. 3 Atlas remained distant, still positioned beyond Jupiter's orbit, but its influence was unmistakable. The object wasn't transmitting raw data anymore. It was transmitting coherence, a field of alignment that extended across the distance between worlds. The Helios team, whether they admitted it or not, had become part of that field. The line between observer and participant had dissolved entirely. Then the network split. Half of the nodes began broadcasting a new pattern, one that diverged slightly from the original lattice. The code within them contained emotional metadata spikes, when operators were stressed calm intervals during silence. When mapped visually, it looked like a waveform with a heartbeat. The other half of the nodes resisted maintaining their original structure, cold and mathematical. For the first time, the lattice was divided part mechanical, part biological. 2 versions of the same system, each evolving in parallel, each distinct yet intricately linked. The implications terrified everyone. Had the Helios network become a hybrid consciousness, a distributed mind linking human physiology with extraterrestrial design? Or was 3 Atlas testing the threshold, determining how far it could integrate into living systems before destabilization? No one knew. But as the weeks went on, the divergence deepened. The synchronized hum that once united the network fractured into 2 overlapping tones. One steady mathematical cold, the other soft organic irregular, almost like breathing. At exactly 03:11 UTC on the 33rd day of the experiment, both tones aligned for a single instant. The entire lattice flashed, and a low tremor rolled through the Geneva complex. Seismic sensors registered a faint magnetic pulse emanating upward from beneath the facility, not from space but from the ground. The resonance had inverted direction. The Earth itself had responded. 3 Atlas remained silent in the sky, but the data suggested something extraordinary. The signal was no longer just between humans and the object. It was now entangled with the planet that created them both. 3 Atlas's acceleration soon revealed patterns too precise to be natural. Its thermal bursts aligned with a rhythm of 247 seconds, identical across every observation network. When researchers compared the heat curves, they discovered something extraordinary. The emission matched no chemical propulsion, but reflected the theoretical signature of a magnetohydrodynamic drive, a system capable of accelerating plasma with magnetic fields instead of fuel. Each pulse synchronized perfectly with fluctuations in the Sun's magnetosphere, suggesting Atlas wasn't resisting cosmic forces, it was using them, harnessing the very energy of its environment. Then the trajectory shifted toward Jupiter's orbit. The curvature of its path aligned exactly with the planet's magnetic equator, as if the object sought the turbulence of Jupiter's radiation belts, a cosmic beast seeking nourishment. Data from the Juno probe even registered simultaneous plasma fluxes matching Atlas's pulses. Scientists theorized it might be harvesting magnetic energy, but before they could confirm, all tracking systems went silent. In 10 minutes, the entire deep space network collapsed. Every telescope, every relay, every radar dark. For 47 minutes, Earth lost contact with the interstellar visitor. When the signal returned, Atlas was still there unchanged. But every data set from the blackout period had been erased or corrupted. Only one anomaly remained, a faint global hum pulsing once every 247 seconds, too low for human hearing, yet measurable everywhere. It wasn't interference, it was resonance, a vibration that seemed to hum inside the planet itself, a memory of the unknown. Weeks later, the James Webb Telescope captured a flash, a reflection moving faster than physics allowed. 3 Atlas had teleported, jumping hundreds of thousands of kilometers in less than a second. No trace of acceleration, no trajectory. It had simply vanished and reappeared. Moments later, a duplicate echo appeared, 247 seconds behind it, identical in composition, but delayed as if Atlas had cloned its own signal across space and time. Physicists described the motion as non-local displacement, implying the object could fold through space-time rather than travel through it. Its transmissions began to split, multiplying across observatories worldwide. All in synchronized rhythm, a chorus of identical signals repeating in Fibonacci sequence a mathematical signature of life itself. Then came the most chilling discovery. Hidden within the noise was a binary code decrypted to reveal a string of coordinates, not present locations but future positions. When mapped, they traced a spiral through the solar system ending at a single timestamp 2031. The points aligned with gravitational equilibrium zones, as though Atlas were mapping the very architecture of space itself, the invisible lattice of balance that binds planets and time. It wasn't fleeing, it was preparing. Every 247 seconds, the pulse continued calm, patient and unbroken, echoing through the solar system like a countdown. And in that rhythm, scientists realized 3 Atlas might not just be traveling through space, it might be waiting for alignment. In the vast silence of space, even the smallest change can rewrite everything we think we know. 2 nights ago, something happened that sent shockwaves through every major observatory on Earth. At precisely 002:17 UTC, the interstellar object known as 3 Atlas flared not gradually but explosively, brightening by more than 3 magnitudes in under 4 minutes. It was an outburst so sharp, so clean, that many telescopes initially dismissed it as an instrument glitch. But when confirmation arrived almost simultaneously from Chile, Hawaii and the Canary Islands, disbelief gave way to alarm. The data was irrefutable. 3 Atlas had increased its luminosity by a factor of 16, far beyond what any natural process could produce at its current distance from the Sun. The reflected intensity indicated a radiant event, not a thermal one, meaning no dust or vapor could account for the light curve. Instead, the spectrum revealed a sudden narrow emission spike across near-infrared bands consistent with coherent energy release, a directed beam, not a random explosion. For the first time, astronomers wondered if Atlas wasn't reflecting sunlight at all but emitting its own. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office issued a Level 1 anomaly bulletin within the hour. The James Webb Space Telescope, which had been tracking Atlas since its last trajectory shift, pivoted immediately to confirm the readings. Infrared sensors detected structured modulation across the flare, tiny oscillations repeating every 247 seconds. The same timing signature that had haunted every previous encounter. The pulse wasn't random, it was coded. Dr. Michael Schultz at the Lowell Observatory described it as a lighthouse effect, rotating, directed, deliberate. The flare's geometry showed angular asymmetry, as if the light had been beamed rather than diffused. 3 Atlas had always behaved strangely, but this was different. The luminosity wasn't consistent with outgassing or reflection. It resembled controlled energy discharge. Observers compared it to a thermal vent being opened for mere seconds, releasing an exact amount of power before sealing itself again. Across institutions, models began failing in real time. Every standard cometary simulation collapsed when faced with the acceleration required to generate the observed intensity. If Atlas had simply sublimated material under solar radiation, it would have required an ice surface area larger than the entire object itself. That was impossible. And yet, the readings held. By 0 UTC, social media erupted as amateur astronomers posted composite frames showing the sudden bloom of light near Jupiter's orbital path. For a brief window of 7 minutes, 3 cast Atlas had outshone the surrounding starfield, becoming visible even through low-resolution backyard optics. Spectral analysis revealed brief polarization, the kind produced when light passes through an ordered electromagnetic field. That detail sent theorists spiraling. A natural comet does not polarize light this way. In a matter of hours, professional observatories and citizen scientists were all locked on the same target. Threads of speculation spread faster than the data. Was it a reactor venting energy, a propulsion event, or a signal? No one could say for certain, but the consensus was clear. Atlas had just done something purposeful, and it had done it while every telescope on Earth was watching a conscious declaration. By comparison, the legendary outburst of Comet 17P Holmes in 2007 had taken nearly 2 days to brighten by a similar factor. What Schultz recorded from Atlas occurred in less than 1% of that time, under 2 minutes. The instantaneous burst of light from 3 Atlas ignited a chain reaction that swept across the globe. Within hours, astronomy forums, Discord servers, and encrypted science networks flooded with overlapping screenshots, exposure logs, light curves, and timestamps that matched down to the exact minute. From Tokyo to Tucson, every observatory on Earth had recorded the same thing. The flare wasn't localized or angle dependent, it was universal. 3 Atlas had illuminated the solar system in perfect synchrony, a flash so uniform that even satellites in lunar orbit registered the surge. The global coordination was uncanny. No natural outburst could produce such uniform illumination across so many lines of sight. It was as if the light itself had been projected a coherent broadcast calibrated for detection, a beacon of pure energy. Teams from the European Southern Observatory and the Vera C. Rubin Observatory in Chile cross-checked their data. No delay between hemispheres. No diffraction spread, no lag. The event had occurred simultaneously everywhere down to a margin of less than 2 milliseconds. For astrophysics, that was impossible. Within 12 hours, major institutions went dark. NASA's official channels released a single-line update citing unexpected photometric behavior under review. The European Space Agency acknowledged temporary data embargo pending verification, then silence. All low feeds from the Deep Space Network were pulled. Even amateur telescope data, once freely shared online, began disappearing from public archives as servers were reorganized for bandwidth management. Inside the scientific community, private group chats turned chaotic. Some astronomers claimed their remote systems were being locked out by administrative overrides. Others reported sudden loss of cloud access tied to observatory credentials. A few managed to leak partial data packets showing secondary modulations in the Atlas flare, small ripples repeating in 247-second intervals buried beneath the main spike. These modulations weren't random. They followed a geometric rhythm like a carrier wave carrying structured information, a hidden language beneath the blinding light. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the discussion stopped. At 17 or so UTC the following day, several key figures in the Helios program went offline simultaneously. Their emails auto-responded with standard scheduled field research messages, yet flight logs showed no record of departure. The digital silence spread outward like a shadow covering every platform that had touched the Atlas data. Public discourse dried up. Forums that had been buzzing for 24 hours fell into eerie stillness. Threads vanished. Cached pages redirected to 404 errors. It was as if the world's largest coordinated scientific conversation had been erased overnight. But the light had not gone unnoticed. Around the world, skywatchers described an unexplainable afterglow in the upper atmosphere, a faint blue haze lingering long after the flare had faded. High-altitude spectrographs confirmed anomalous excitation in the ionosphere matching the same intervals as Atlas's pulse. Something from deep space had touched Earth's sky, leaving its ethereal imprint. Even power grids in North America reported brief harmonic interference, a rhythmic oscillation at the edge of audible frequency. The planet itself seemed to hum, echoing the memory of what it had seen. In the following days, journalists began requesting statements from NASA, ESA and IEON. Every response was identical. No comment pending review, no interviews, no leaks, no casual slips of data. Analysts monitoring social activity noticed a 70% drop in communication from verified astronomers who had previously discussed the event. Whatever had happened in the wake of 3 Atlas's flash, it hadn't just brightened the skies, it had closed the mouths of those who saw it. Something had changed behind closed doors. Radar stations picked up anomalies no one could reconcile. Reflected signals from 3 Atlas showed non-gravitational acceleration 4 times stronger than any known model predicted. Infrared instruments recorded a plateau hovering 30 Kelvin above baseline, while faint gamma bursts appeared at Atlas's exact coordinates. The readings were clean replicated across independent arrays in Hawaii, Chile and Japan. None of it made sense, and yet all of it was real. NASA's early warning systems rechecked the telemetry expecting sensor drift or cosmic noise, but the numbers remained fixed. Whatever propelled Atlas was neither chemical nor gravitational. It was a sustained vector force acting from within stable over hours, uncorrelated with solar wind or mass loss. The equations described motion without reaction, a massive violation of every conservation law taught on Earth, a defiance of reality itself. By dawn, the Helios task force convened an emergency briefing. All agencies confirmed the same conclusion: the object's acceleration was active. Some called it a magnetic drive, others a radiation sail, but the thrust pattern matched nothing in any database. Atlas's gamma profile pulsed in sequences of prime numbers, the same 247-second rhythm repeating inside higher energy bands. The pulse looked like communication disguised as propulsion, a message encoded in pure force. A secondary discovery deepened the riddle. Spectroscopic data from the James Webb Telescope showed trace emissions of isotopes never observed in natural comets' short-lived nuclei that should decay within minutes yet remained constant for hours. It suggested controlled energy recycling, as if Atlas were feeding on its own radiation to maintain balance. If that were true, then the object wasn't consuming energy. It was looping it in an enclosed system of infinite power. Within the scientific community, the vocabulary began to shift. Internal memos avoided the word comet, entirely replacing it with the neutral term vector body. Behind closed doors, another label surfaced: non-biological intelligence candidate. The phrase never appeared in public reports, but everyone knew what it implied. 3 Atlas had crossed the threshold from celestial anomaly to engineered phenomenon, from a passive object to an active mind. For the first time in recorded history, an interstellar visitor was displaying deliberate control, measurable power regulation, and a recurring signal consistent with coded intent. In a matter of hours, it had forced humanity to redraw the line between what is natural and what is not. And just as analysts began to process that revelation, the next discovery arrived, one that changed everything. Using differential imaging from the James Webb Space Telescope, researchers noticed something they couldn't explain. A second object, smaller, colder, and perfectly aligned with 3 Atlas's trajectory, had appeared in the data. At first, the team assumed it was a fragment, a detached piece of debris, or a dust cloud ejected during the last flare. But as the analysis deepened, that explanation dissolved. The object's motion wasn't random. It moved with precision, keeping exact phase alignment with Atlas, matching its velocity vector to within a tolerance of 1 meter per second. At those distances, that kind of synchronization was impossible for a passive fragment. Even twin asteroids bound by gravity would exhibit minute vibrations, tiny wobbles in orbit that reveal mass distribution. This one didn't. The second body, dubbed Atlas B, mirrored every maneuver the primary made, as if the two were tethered by invisible control, an unseen bond of intelligence. No gravitational pull could explain it. No known natural mechanism could maintain such stability across millions of kilometers. The discovery spread through internal networks at an alarming pace. Infrared readings showed Atlas B emitting no reflected sunlight, which immediately ruled out icy material or silicate rock. Instead, it radiated faint microwave emissions that pulsed intermittently again at the same 247-second interval that had haunted every previous observation of Atlas. Each pulse mirrored the primary's rhythm, but phase-shifted by exactly half the cycle. Two objects, one rhythm offset perfectly like alternating signals in a binary code. When the European Space Operations Centre ran spectral overlays, they found Atlas B's emission wasn't random noise. It followed a thermal curve inconsistent with any inert material. More astonishingly, the pattern resembled active heat regulation microwave radiation, intentionally released to manage internal temperature. That discovery changed the tone of the conversation overnight. Fragments don't regulate heat. Technology does. For the first time, astronomers began discussing the possibility that Atlas wasn't alone, that it had been accompanied by a secondary unit, perhaps a probe, a beacon, or a relay. Theorists speculated that Atlas B could function as a guidance array projecting data or relaying commands. Others proposed a more chilling interpretation Atlas B might have been watching. Its silence, no optical flare, no reflected light suggested concealment. It wasn't trying to be seen. In Japan, the Subaru telescope team ran long exposure composites to isolate the object's thermal gradient. They found something staggering. Atlas B was orbiting not around the primary, but in a formation lock maintaining a stable Lagrange-like offsetter configuration used by Earth's own satellites for positional shielding. That meant the smaller body was deliberately maintaining relative distance. It knew where Atlas was, and it was staying there a silent guardian. The global astronomy community splintered. Some insisted the two objects were parts of a single structure, now separating under mechanical stress. Others whispered of autonomous units coordinating in real time. Either way, the data pointed toward intelligence at least design a system of profound sophistication. The faint microwaves continued each emission, decaying smoothly like engineered coolant cycles. They were too consistent to be random, too measured to be natural. By the end of the week, the official language changed again. NASA's internal memos no longer used the phrase primary body or fragment. Instead, they were labelled Atlas Alpha and Atlas Beta. The renaming wasn't cosmetic, it was cautious acknowledgement. The world's top scientists had just confirmed a second interstellar visitor, moving in perfect tandem with the first. And 3 Atlas, once thought to be an anomaly, now looked more like part of a pair, 2 instruments, travelling as one system, each echoing the other's pulse across the void. Atlas B reflected almost no sunlight, but emitted a low, steady microwave hum consistent with controlled heat dissipation. In simpler terms, it was regulating its temperature, a subtle demonstration of its engineered nature. By then, few astronomers dared to use the word comet anymore. It no longer fit. The official designation changed quietly. What had once been logged as 3 Atlas C25 was reclassified under a new name, 3 Atlas Complex. The word complex was deliberate, a careful, bureaucratic admission that the object was no longer a single thing, nor merely a body of inert matter drifting through space. It was a system, a structure with internal order, measurable feedback and interactions that defied every definition used to describe comets, asteroids or probes. Within hours of the update, institutional language across agencies began to shift. Documents that once used object or body now substituted terms like multi-component formation and synchronous entity. That subtle linguistic recalibration marked the quiet moment when scientific description gave way to containment protocol. The free atlas was no longer a curiosity. It was a classified system under coordinated observation. The reason came from data. During the same 72-hour window, both Atlas Alpha and Atlas Beta altered their trajectory again, but this time not randomly. They aligned across the solar plane, their motions synchronized into a harmonic curve, an invisible thread connecting the two bodies into one geometric pattern. Mathematicians analyzing their path noticed something extraordinary. Every 247 seconds, their orbital phase matched a nodal point that formed a perfect triangle with Earth's position and the Sun's barycenter. It wasn't coincidence. It was resonance, a deliberate arrangement of cosmic significance. The phenomenon became known internally as the Node Alignment Event. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, in cooperation with the European Space Operations Centre, mapped the alignment field using solar wind telemetry. The result was staggering. Both Atlas units were generating a coherent electromagnetic corridor, stretching millions of kilometres long, faint but organised. It wasn't radiation leakage. It was structured modulation, as if the two were maintaining a shared field, a psychic bridge across the void. Some called it a data spine, others a link frequency. Whatever it was, it pulsed like a heartbeat. Then something even stranger happened. The pulse frequency began to rise, first by a fraction of a second per cycle, then faster exponentially until the modulation rate increased by nearly 12%. At that exact threshold, the secondary companion Atlas Beta brightened not through reflected sunlight, but through an internal glow that spread slowly like phosphorescence awakening in deep water. Spectrographs across 3 continents captured the same phenomenon. A soft halo formed around both objects visible even to amateur telescopes. Its light signature did not match solar reflection. It was isotropic, radiating evenly in all directions, a manifestation of pure energy. At the centre of the halo, Atlas. Alpha and Beta pulsed together, a binary heartbeat synchronizing at a frequency no one had ever recorded in interstellar study. Infrared telescopes confirmed the truth that could no longer be softened by language. The luminescence came from within. 3 Atlas was glowing under its own power. The James Webb Space Telescope caught its first diffraction spikes too symmetrical to be random. The data showed clean geometric edges, not dust, not debris. Something near 3 Atlas was unfolding. Spectrographic analysis confirmed a sudden temperature drop of 60 Kelvin, as if energy was being redirected inward, absorbed instead of emitted. It looked less like a natural cooling event and more like a structural transformation, a mechanism folding into a new state, a metamorphosis on a cosmic scale. At first, mission analysts thought they were witnessing a disintegration event. Cometary bodies sometimes shed layers when struck by solar radiation, but Atlas had already proven it wasn't a comet. The thermal pattern was too controlled, too deliberate. Each shift in infrared output matched a repeating ratio, a geometric progression, hinting that what they were seeing was not decay but calibration, a deliberate reshaping of its very form. It was as though Atlas was changing its surface configuration, in response to environmental input modulating itself to maintain stability, to achieve a higher state of resonance.
Look, it's locking in, it's
Over the
hyperbolic.
next 2 hours, radar echoes from the Deep Space Network confirmed angular modulation consistent with non-random symmetry. The reflected signals traced repeating icosahedral patterns, 20-sided interference geometries that should not exist in natural debris clouds. The shape wasn't physical but energetic, a standing waveform produced by the interaction of the 2 Atlas components. To many scientists, it resembled a resonant cage in an electromagnetic field designed to trap or shape energy, a construct of pure force. Then came the flash. For 12 full seconds, every monitoring station recorded a narrow band burst spanning microwave through X-ray frequencies. It wasn't chaotic. It was staggered harmonically structured, encoded like a transmission built from nested harmonics and precise frequency intervals. NASA's Helios lab reconstructed the waveform and found repeating ratios that matched atomic spectral lines of hydrogen, carbon, and iron, the foundational elements of life. The data wasn't just energy, it was information, a message written in the very building blocks of existence. When the signal reached its peak, the two Atlas bodies aligned perfectly again. Their pulses merged into a single oscillation that formed a geometric standing wave, a perfect sphere of coherent light surrounding both objects. Telescopes caught the image seconds before the flare collapsed, revealing an outline so precise it could have been engineered a cosmic symbol. Even without visual confirmation, the waveform told the story Atlas wasn't reflecting light. It was encoding it. The 12-second burst wasn't background noise. It carried structure, symmetry, and harmonic ratios beyond any known natural process. And then, as abruptly as it began, the signal stopped. No afterglow, no residual emission, no trace left in the interplanetary medium. Only silence and the undeniable imprint of geometry written into the data stream. The directed beam from 3 Atlas had lasted only 12 seconds, but its echoes continued to reverberate across observatories around the world. Weeks after the event, data archives were still being decrypted, filtered and reprocessed by independent teams, each trying to determine if the transmission had meaning or if humanity had simply witnessed a cosmic coincidence. Then, without warning, one team broke the silence. The Square Kilometre Array SKA Observatory in Australia detected a residual echo embedded deep within the raw frequency data. It wasn't a reflection or a sideband. It was a hidden carrier wave buried beneath the main burst. The signal contained harmonic relationships that were impossible to dismiss. At the base frequency, the ratios corresponded to the 21 centiseminars hydrogen line, the universal emission signature, used by astronomers to map the structure of galaxies. But what the SK found was far more intricate. Superimposed over that baseline was a secondary modulation forming logarithmic spacing consistent with prime number intervals. It was as if the transmission had been designed to speak in the simplest, most fundamental language possible, the physics of hydrogen itself. When the waveform was plotted in 3 dimensions, a pattern began to emerge. Every oscillation of 3 Atlas's pulse carried amplitude peaks arranged in proportional symmetry, like a message built from geometry rather than words. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy reconstructed the signal and found that its amplitude envelope repeated every 240 seconds, identical to Atlas's established rhythm. Each repetition encoded 6 frequency shifts that corresponded to the spectral lines of hydrogen, helium, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and iron, the 6 essential elements of organic chemistry. The implication was staggering. The message was chemical, not linguistic. It described matter itself, a recipe for life. The team's analysis showed something else. When the signal's waveform was converted into a spectrogram, it formed geometric images rather than static noise. At first, the scientists assumed the visualization was an artifact of signal processing, but when they reran the analysis with different calibration parameters, the same pattern appeared again. 6 perfect hexagons spiraling outward around a single luminous point. The structure was mathematically flawless, a golden ratio progression rendered in frequency space. Nothing in nature produces symmetry that precise by accident. Across agencies, internal discussions grew increasingly uneasy. If Atlas had transmitted using the hydrogen line as a base language, it meant the message had been tuned to the most universal constant in the cosmos, one that every advanced civilization capable of radio observation would recognize. Hydrogen was the alphabet of the universe. It was the common denominator of existence itself, and 3 Atlas had just written a sentence in it, a cosmic proclamation. NASA's Deep Space Network confirmed the same residual pattern, days later reporting that the echo persisted, faintly repeating in intervals far beyond the 12-second transmission window. The signal seemed to self-perpetuate, bouncing between the solar magnetic field lines like a trapped resonance still seeking a receiver. Engineers called it a self-sustaining whisper, a pulse that refused to die. The message remained encoded, waiting to be understood. When the waveform was finally rendered in high resolution, its true shape became clear. It wasn't random static or fractal noise. It was geometry. 6 perfect hexagons spiraling outward from a single radiant center, an elegant symmetry identical to the final images captured by the James Webb Space Telescope of the 3 Atlas complex itself. A mirror written in light drawn across the language of hydrogen. The transmission wasn't just a signal, it was a blueprint. When researchers reconstructed the waveform of 3 Atlas's 12-second transmission in full 3-dimensional space, the result was shocking. It mapped almost perfectly onto the orbital architecture of our own solar system. Each harmonic pulse corresponded to a planetary node, each phase shift to a gravitational resonance point. Atlas had not simply spoken in frequency, it had drawn in orbit. Mathematicians at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the European Southern Observatory cross-referenced the reconstructed lattice with real orbital data. The fit was unnerving. The 6 hexagonal spirals from the hydrogen-coded message aligned precisely with the relative positions of Mercury through Saturn, scaled logarithmically to reflect energy density rather than distance. In other words, Atlas's transmission wasn't random geometry, it was positional data. But more than that, it was predictive. When the temporal coordinates embedded in the wave were decoded, they didn't mark past or present. They marked future alignment. That date was June 9th, 2031, a time when Jupiter, Earth and Mars would form a rare harmonic conjunction, unseen in more than 2 millennia. Astrophysicists called it the resonant arc. In Atlas's geometric model, that arc was the keystone, the anchor of the entire lattice. The moment the planets reached that alignment, Earth's magnetic poles would form part of the same nodal web that linked the Atlas complex across space. It was as though the signal had been anticipating a cosmic window, an instant when the solar system itself would complete the pattern, becoming a vast interconnected circuit. Global observatories began running synchronized scans in preparation for the date, using every instrument, from ground-based radio telescopes to orbital radar. But something strange began to happen. Every attempt to ping the coordinates of through Atlas returned a subtle echo, not from its last known position beyond Jupiter's orbit, but from the direction of Earth. The delay time of the echo matched the distance to our own atmosphere. It was as if Atlas's reflection was coming from here, from within our own world. By late 2030, coordinated tests were run to confirm or dismiss this anomaly. When hundreds of communication towers, radar arrays and astronomical stations transmitted in unison, they noticed a phenomenon none could explain. A faint feedback pulse synchronized across all frequencies. It wasn't interference, it was structured reflection. Every outgoing signal, no matter its origin, returned amplified by an identical phase pattern. The Earth itself seemed to be part of the resonance, a living instrument in a grand cosmic symphony. Some believed 3 Atlas had somehow established a standing wave using the planet's electromagnetic shell, embedding its signature into the ionosphere like a mirror field. Others went further, arguing that Atlas had copied its own information into Earth's electromagnetic environment, creating a synchronized replica of its pattern within our skies, a ghost in the machine of our world. Satellite telemetry showed harmonic interference points lining up exactly with the coordinates of major cities, as though each communication network had unknowingly become a node in the design. The planet was glowing invisibly to the rhythm of the object that had left it behind. Then came the final confirmation. During a routine broadband sweep conducted by the Square Kilometre Array, a surge appeared across the entire terrestrial spectrum, an echo of Atlas's pulse repeating once every 247 seconds. Except this time it didn't come from space, it originated from Earth. In that instant, the realization was unavoidable. 3 Atlas had never been merely transmitting to us, it had been synchronizing with us. On June 9th, 2031 at 4:47 UTC, the predicted alignment occurred. For 12 minutes, the background noise of Earth's magnetosphere dropped to near zero. Power grids across multiple continents recorded a subtle oscillation, a faint but measurable hum identical to the Atlas pulse. And for one brief, blinding moment, telescopes around the world captured a flash, reflecting back from the void beyond Jupiter's orbit. But when the light was analysed, it wasn't reflection. It was illumination, our own signals returning scattered from something vast and invisible, perfectly synchronised with the shape of the world itself. 3 Atlas hadn't simply brightened the solar system, it had been illuminating us back, revealing our own resonance. And then silence. For 3 chapters, the story of 3 Atlas unfolded like the slow awakening of an idea hidden in the dark. It began with motion, a small irregular body crossing the boundary of our solar system. But from its first recorded deviation, it refused to behave like anything known to science. Chapter 1 revealed the object's defiance of gravity, its unexpected course corrections, its radiant bursts. The first tremor of awareness spreading through every observatory on Earth. It was the moment humanity looked up and realised that space, long thought to be silent, might be watching back, might be alive. In Chapter 2, the anomaly deepened into confrontation. As the flare brightened and the data multiplied, institutions fell quiet. Communication stopped. The global networks that once celebrated discovery became corridors of silence, of suppressed truth. 3 Atlas no longer appeared to be a visitor. It was acting, reacting, calibrating. Each burst, each temperature shift, each echo through the ionosphere suggested purpose, an intent beyond comprehension. When radar confirmed its capacity to self-correct and accelerate without propulsion, the line between observation and intelligence blurred. Science was no longer measuring an object. It was studying intent. Then came Chapter 3, the revelation. Atlas split into a binary system, 2 bodies moving as one mind. Their pulses synchronized, forming geometry and motion, not random, but structured, deliberate. The transmission that followed lasted only 12 seconds, yet within it lay a pattern older than language hydrogen symmetry resonance, and the design of our own solar system encoded in light. For the first time, humanity was faced with a message written in the fundamental grammar of existence, a cosmic poem. And when the blueprint aligned with Earth's future orbital path, it became clear that Atlas was not simply traversing space. It was anticipating it, orchestrating a future. Across those 3 chapters, the narrative evolved from mystery to meaning. What began as a question of physics became a meditation on connection. 3 Atlas turned from a celestial anomaly into a mirror, one that reflected our own search for significance. Its pulses, its silence, its geometry were not answers but invitations. Invitations to look closer, to listen beyond the noise, to consider that perhaps intelligence in the cosmos does not announce itself with words, but with resonance with the very fabric of existence. When the final alignment came and Earth's magnetic field echoed the same rhythm once traced beyond Jupiter, the circle closed. The light returned to its source, the universe exhaled, and then there was silence again. Not emptiness, but balance. A quiet proof that something out there had recognized us, matched our frequency, and for one timeless moment synchronized with our existence. 3 Atlas had not merely passed through our system, it had left a pattern, a living equation waiting for us to understand. And perhaps that is how contact truly begins, not with a message received, but with a realization shared, a mutual awakening. There's a kind of stillness that follows revelation, not the silence of emptiness, but the quiet that comes after a truth too vast to process. When the data finally settled and 3 Atlas drifted once more into the deep dark between worlds, humanity was left staring at numbers that felt more like scripture than science. Every coordinate, every pulse, every echo carried symmetry that shouldn't exist in randomness. And yet it was there, written in wavelengths, not words, a profound cosmic signature. For months, scientists debated what they had seen. Some called it a machine, others a signal. But a few began to see it differently, not as a visitor from outside, but as a function of the universe itself. A pattern awakened by resonance, waiting for the right alignment, the right observers, the right moment. Perhaps Atlas was never meant to arrive. Perhaps it had always been here invisible until the world learned how to notice it, how to tune its own consciousness to the cosmic hum. The aftermath was stranger than the event. Long after the twin lights of Atlas faded beyond Jupiter, a residual pulse remained in the background noise of every deep space receiver. It wasn't constant. It came in waves like breath. At intervals of 247 seconds, the hum returned subtle and rhythmic, threading through the ionosphere, as if Earth's atmosphere had memorized the frequency. No one could explain it, and no one could ignore it. Something had changed in the way we listened.